Welcome to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast, sponsored by Dominion Enterprise Services. I'm Catherine Tindall, CPA and founder of Dominion. We're a tax and accounting firm focused exclusively on serving advisors for their own tax planning and filing needs as business owners. At Dominion, we work alongside advisory firm owners to bring proactive strategy, clarity, and confidence to their tax planning so they can focus on growing their firms. The focus of this show is to cover different areas that I've experienced as a tax planner, working with advisor clients in their lives, building their practices. So let's get started. Welcome to the show. Hi, Derrick. It's great having you on. For those of you who don't know Derrick, he is a crowd favorite speaker, widely regarded as one of the most influential business growth experts. We connected on LinkedIn. I've seen you in a number of places, and you're, built and sold a top 1% financial planning firm for millions. You're named a top Forbes advisor, and now you're giving back to the industry and working with advisors, helping them avoid mistakes and take advantage of strategies, attracting ideal clients and, building their practices the right way. So thanks for coming on the show today, Derrick.
Oh, my pleasure, Catherine. Thanks for having me. And I need to let my kids hear that intro so they know their dad has some street cred.
It's funny, this is a total anecdote, but when I was a kid, my parents were actually accountants. And I remember, I think I was in second grade and they did what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I'd never be an accountant. That's so boring. Why would I do that? And of course, that's where I ended up, but a little bit differently. Yeah, a little different than the parents' practice, but it's funny how those things go. So in a little bit of the pre-show, we were talking about, some of your experiences around working with advisor. I really loved how we were talking about the power of words.
Yes.
And, the ability for advisors to really connect in and really think through how they're using their words to really take them to the next level in terms of growth. Could you give some background, what you mean by that, and, where should people start when they're, thinking about this as a concept?
Yeah, so when I became an advisor, I was 26, but I had a real problem. I looked like I was 13. And the problem was, who's going to take me seriously? I had no gray hair, no wrinkles. I had no list of country club membership people. And when I would say to people, I'm a financial advisor, when they asked me, what did I do? You could just see the people's eyes glaze over. They started to walk backwards. They'd murmur something like, I have enough insurance already. I already have a financial advisor. It got ugly really fast. And I was like, I said was financial advisor. What is the problem here? I studied, I've done all these license work, and you're telling me no based on my title. And so I knew there had to be a better way. And one time I made a discovery, and that was I said the problem that I described for people when they asked me, what did I do for a living? And suddenly they leaned in and they said, tell me more about that. And that's when everything changed for me. That's when I realized I went from just a commoditized, run-of-the-mill, just another financial advisor, to a problem-solving specialist. And so I would ask you to think about this for our listeners. Let's say that you're at a social event and you've got your favorite beverage in your hand and you're kind of mingling around the room. And a man approaches you and asks, hey, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm a financial advisor. And he says, oh, okay. And you ask, well, what do you do? And he says, well, I'm a personal trainer. I design workout and eating plans so people can get into shape. And you ask him a few more questions, have a conversation with him, and you continue to mingle around the room. Well, later on in the evening, a woman approaches you and she asks, hey, what do you do? And you reply, oh, I'm a financial advisor. She says, oh, okay. And you ask, well, what do you do? And she says, you know how busy business owners, they typically put others' needs above their own so their health takes a back seat? We design custom-tailored workout and eating plans so they can feel good, but they can look great, and one day they can have the energy to chase their grandkids across the floor. We specialize in personal training for busy professionals. Pause. Now let's say that a week goes by and you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, I think I need a personal trainer. Which personal trainer are you going to call? The man or the woman? I'll ask you that question, Catherine.
Well, I'd probably call the woman just based on the description. And then also women tend to like to work with women for things like that. But
yeah. Yeah. And so assuming that that is true, which it is, what is it about what the woman said that would cause you to say, I think I'd rather work with her?
Well, she leads with the outcome, right?
Yes.
She leads with the benefit and the pain that's getting solved.
Yeah. So what I found is that when you lead with financial advisor or wealth manager or dream funder, whatever you call yourself, those clever names we come up with, you force people to burn brain cells to figure out what the heck you're talking about. And so
Yep.
what I realized was is in the circle of CPAs and advisors, we all understand the term financial advisors or CPAs, but outside of the circle, most people don't. And so when
Hmm.
you began to connect with an instantly relatable problem, people lean in to say, tell me more about that. That
Hmm.
one change completely revolutionized my practice.
Hmm. That's wonderful. And I guess when you were, introducing yourself to other people, kind of how did you cue it up? You say you're in that cocktail party. What was the intro that you were using at the time that worked so
Mhm.
well?
Yeah, so my specialty at the time, we focused almost exclusively on people who were within about 5 to 10 years of retirement or already
Hmm.
retired. And so the big issue for them, the hot button was, I don't want to run out of money. How
Yeah.
embarrassing would that be? How foolish would I look? And so I call this my you know how framework because it starts off with you know how. And when you say you know how, it assumes the person you're talking to will know what you're talking about. So it
Hmm.
leads them to nod along and say, yes, I get that. So I would say, if you ask me, what do I do? You know how so many people, they worry about running out of money in retirement? We help
Hmm.
fix that. You see, that was my one line, and it's the first line of the three-step you know how framework. But the goal is to encapsulate what you do, the pain point people have, and the fact that you can fix that. So, for example, let me say two things, Catherine. So let's say I say to you, number one, you know how it feels like when you take your car to the mechanic? It feels like you're either getting taken advantage of or overcharged.
Hmm.
Yeah, you nodded your head. It was instant recognition. Okay, second, picture two moms, and one mom, they're both moms of teenage daughters, okay? And one mom says to the other mom, you know how it feels like when you talk to your daughter? What you say goes in one ear and right out the other?
Hmm.
And the other mom's going to say, yes. Now, in either of those two examples I gave, did you have to burn any brain cells to understand the scenario I was describing?
No, not at all. Other
So,
than I'm not looking forward to being having a teenage daughter.
yeah, I do speak from experience that that is a true. It does feel like things go in one ear, not the other. So the point is, when you tell someone something new, they don't always know what to do. But
Hmm.
when you tell someone something true, it draws them closer to you. And so one of my coaching clients recently asked, Derrick, I want to work with women specifically who have life changes that occur. And
Hmm.
so he gave me this long paragraph, and I said, listen, by the time you get to line three, you're boring people, their eyes are rolling back. So we came up with the line one of the you know how framework, and it sounded something like this. So what do? You know how women will often face a sudden life event like a death or a job loss or a divorce, and they suddenly feel stuck? We help fix that. Well, the moment he began to say those words, people began to connect with, yes, either that's me or I know someone who that's their situation. Or, for
Hmm.
example, a client that works with doctors, instead of talking about how we specialize with, physicians or surgeons, those kind of things, which there's so many advisors that do, she would
Hmm.
say, you know how doctors are great at working with their patients, but their finances feel out of control? We help them fix that. And
Hmm.
then the second piece would then be to simply describe your 3 to 5 step process, and ideally using an odd number. This is weird, but psychology tells us people like odd numbers better than
Hmm.
even numbers because even numbers sound too polished.
Hmm.
Odd numbers sound more raw and relatable. So the rest of my framework might sound like through our 5 step framework, we custom tailor a strategy so people won't run out of money and they have peace of mind. We
Hmm.
specialize in retirement income planning. And so it's very, very simple. So the key is you say line one of what the problem is that you connect with. And if they lean in and want more, then you go to line two. And then you wrap it up with that, we specialize in. Because what we know is when you say you're a specialist, it automatically distances you from all the other advisors. Even if people don't have the concern you specialize in, it draws them closer to you because you're the specialist. So it's very, very powerful and very, very effective.
Yeah, no, that's that's wonderful advice. And I guess, one of the questions that kind of precedes using this kind of a strategy for advisors where maybe they don't have an exact ideal client, how do you cue up the intro when maybe you don't have a niche or, how maybe some of these things that are kind of higher up in the, I don't want to say the funnel, but
Right.
like higher up in terms of determining like, okay, who are we targeting? Why are we targeting them? What's the outcome that they're going to be getting? Maybe if you could speak a little bit around, some of that thought process that goes into making some of those decisions that then would lead to this technique being so effective. Catherine here. Just wanted to say thanks for tuning into the show and hope you've been enjoying it. Since we're all at the mercy of social media algorithms, if you wouldn't mind rating the podcast on whatever platform that you listen to, I'd really appreciate it. And also, if you're looking to stay in the loop on current tax updates, what the firm is working on, and just the things that I think you as a firm owner need to be aware of when it comes to the world of tax, you can sign up for our newsletter using the link below. I only send out editions when we have really useful things to share or things that I think are important to have your attention and energy on. So let's get back to the show, and thanks again for being a listener.
Yeah, so one of the biggest questions I get asked is, Derrick, I want to work with a wide group of people. I don't want to narrow it down. It feels like I'm limiting who I can work with. Common concern people have. So one of the things I tell people to do is don't waste a lot of money on this. Just go to your current client base and they will tell you who you work with the best. And so once you're done with listening to this great episode, on a piece of paper, write down your 5 most recent clients by name, and then your 5 favorite clients. Okay? So 2 things will happen. When you look at your 5 most recent clients, as the CEO of your business, what you're probably going to find, if you're like most hungry advisors who want to grow, half of the people that are your past 5 you brought on, probably maybe 2 of them are ideal clients. You've been so busy growing your business and wanting to bring in clients, you brought in people who were less than who you really want to work with. We're just being honest here. But what you want to ask yourself is 3 questions about both your most recent 5 and your favorite 5. And that is, what was the problem those people came to you to solve for them? What was the problem they brought to you to solve for them? And you begin to weave a thread through these people, and they're telling you based on the fact they worked with you, what is that problem? What was their pain point? And then second, you want to ask, what was the emotion they felt when they came to you? Were they nervous? Were they anxious? Were they unsure? Were they worried? And then what is the emotion they feel now that they're working with you? Are they confident? Do they have peace of mind? Do they feel secure? And then all of those words begin to frame out part of the you know how framework, okay? But here's the challenge. You might realize, Derrick, the people I'm working with right now, I don't want to work with them. I want to work with a different demographic. So what you need to do is think about who is the person you want to work with. For example, many people I coach and consult, they tend to find they work well with hardworking professionals that make good money. Okay? These could be companies all over the country, software companies, mortgage companies, pharmaceutical companies, all the above. Okay? And so we craft some messaging around what are the worries and fears they've got. And so, for example, one of my clients, we came up with this, and it was, you know how so many hardworking professionals, they make good money, but they feel like they're falling further behind financially? We help fix that. You see, what you want to think about is if you were to picture your ideal client and their spouse or their significant other on the back porch on a Friday night of their house with their favorite beverage in their hand, what words are they saying that describes what they don't like or what they're worried about in their lives. And sometimes it may be, I'm here with you right now, but my brain is chained back to my desk. I feel like I'm with my kids, but I'm not there. We've got all this money, but we're not living the life that we said we wanted. You see, when you can talk about those concerns, those instantly relatable pain points, most people think you got to lead in with the features and the benefits of your products and services. Boring. Most people think I need to talk in complex words to impress high net worth people. Boring. What we find is people who have a lot of money, they will pay you more for simplicity so they can escape complexity. And many people will say, Derrick, but if I want to work with higher net worth people, I'm going to have to get that designation. I'm going to have to get more education. I'm going to have more experience. Here's what I would say. No, no, and no. If you want to work with higher net worth prospects, you simply need to have a greater understanding of higher net worth prospects' problems and know the words to say so those prospects come your way.
So how do you get to how do you get to those problems if maybe, you're that scrappy advisor who you've got a book of not so ideal fits, you've cut your teeth, but wanting to go up market and maybe beyond where your current base is, like where do you start to figure out those problems that they're facing?
Yeah, two things here. First of all, just because you have a client base doesn't mean those are the clients you have to stay with. Okay, and this is very common as advisors and entrepreneurs and business owners, as they grow, often the person they think they best serve or they feel like they want to serve is not who they end up best serving. And if they continue doing that, those clients are typically not best served because they're not working with the right advisor. If that makes sense. And so there's two things to do here. First of all, if you want to change the client base, then you need to change the rooms that you are in to get different clients. So for example, if you find right now that you're attracting whatever category may be, you're working only with engineers or with nurses or teachers or whatever that may be, then you want to ask yourself, if I want to work with professionals who are making good money but feel like they're falling further behind, where would be the rooms those people would be in? Well, it might be in developing your LinkedIn content strategy to connect with people who are on LinkedIn. Or it might be begin doing seminars and reaching out, offering no-cost education opportunities for some of these companies. But positioning yourself and say, where do these people go? What are their interests? What do they like to do? Do they like pickleball? Whatever that may be, mahjong, wherever they're at. And then you begin to have a strategy to attract those people and get in the way of where those people are. But I think one of the biggest ways that people can impact this, and it's often overlooked, and that is this center of influence strategy that I work with advisors and entrepreneurs. Now, what we know is, and many advisors will recommend, for example, if you're a well-respected CPA, Catherine, advisors may say, well, hey, Catherine, if I refer someone to you, can you refer someone back to me? And then this dialogue happens all over with CPAs. And the problem is that most CPAs' clients have been referred by advisors, so they want to protect that relationship. Am I right? Yeah, there's privacy. They pride themselves on, no, I'm not referring the person that gave me someone to somebody else. And so this frustrates advisors to no end. This happens with attorneys. It happens with everybody. And it's because advisors think that it's this quid pro quo relationship. So instead, when you approach a center of influence like a CPA, an attorney, an estate planner, the pickleball instructor, whoever it may be, okay, you want to let them know your you-know-how framework in terms of who you specialize in working with. That way, they easily have in their brain, when you see this person with this problem, think of me. Okay, that's step one. You simplify it. So now you're not this advisor with unrealistic expectations. You have given a planted seed to the center of influence. But then the second thing is, don't think of yourself as, I want referrals from you. I want to partner with you. Ask the
Mm-hmm.
center of influence. Number one, hey, I work with so many people. Do you want to grow? Like, are you in the business to attract new clients right now? You'd be shocked. So many centers of influence I talk to and I'm asked to consult with, they have reached their max of capacity. And so they simply want to service their existing book of business. So you want to find that out to know, is this somebody who is as hungry as I am to grow and attract more clients? If so, now we go to step two. And step two is think of me like a coach to help you grow your business. And I will coach my advisors to coach their CPAs on how to craft their how framework, how to
Mm-hmm.
talk in the language to separate them from other CPAs. So while they're growing their business, you're growing business with them, and now there's a partnership, and even finding ways to say, you know what, let's do a webinar together. I want to get you on a line with all of my clients and talk about the number one tax filing mistake people make and how they can avoid it. And by the way, here's Catherine to talk about it. You see, when you add value, then you
Mm-hmm.
become more valued.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, a question that kind of lingers in my mind, it seems like a lot of the benefit of the how strategy is the specificity there. And I wonder, just maybe from some examples from clients or just, your own experiences, how specific is too specific or how broad is too broad? How niche do you feel like people need to be in order to get this to function well?
Yeah. So one of the biggest concerns is that, well, Derrick, there's so many problems I solve for people. How do I
Mm-hmm.
pick just one? Okay. But here's what we know. We know that the human brain can retain basically bits of information, not paragraphs. If you go into describing, here's all the problems you solve, well, now you're seeing people's eyes glaze over, they're walking backwards. The key is you want to have one specific pain point that causes someone to say, well, now tell me more about that. And then you can follow up with, here are the other pieces. So here's an example. I had an advisor recently, a well-known national firm, said, Derrick, we work with a lot of real estate investors and we
Mm-hmm.
do some complex strategies to help them reduce their taxes. Okay. And so I said, well, tell me how you describe that. And he reeled off like 4 or 5 sentences. My eyes glazed
Mm-hmm.
over, etc. And so we came up with something simple that we help real estate investors reduce their taxes, period.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, is that simple, Derrick? I said, yeah, yeah. So you want to say it like you're talking to a third grader.
Mm-hmm.
Basic, easy, understand language that they instantly say, yes, I get that. That's what I want. Okay. So here's another example. I had a call from a panicked advisor a few months ago. And he said, Derrick, I need to call in a favor. And of course, I said yes. He said, I've got this 24-year-old advisor, next gen advisor that I brought in to bring in higher net worth prospects, but she's
Mm-hmm.
struggling to bring in high net worth prospects and struggling to bring in anybody. Can you
Mm-hmm.
coach her and help her? And I said, sure. And so I called her and I said, okay, tell me what is happening when you talk to a prospect. And so I
Mm-hmm.
said, when you get asked, what do you do for a living? What happens? And she said, well, I talk about I'm studying for my CFP and how as a firm we have 250 years of experience, and basically what she was doing was she was overselling and compensating for her age as a liability. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this firm focused on business owners and founders, and so they had an event coming up, and so we practiced our how framework with her. And so she called me back the next day after the event, and here's what she said happened. She said, Derrick, you're not going to believe this. I was asked by several people, but one in specific, an older gentleman approached her and said, hey, so what do you do? And she remembered feeling kind of nervous. Okay, now what did Derrick say to say? She said,
Mm-hmm.
well, you know how busy business owners and founders, what keeps them awake at night is the thought of what they've worked so hard to build. Their kids won't know what to do with it, and the whole thing will be lost. We help them fix that. She said the guy's eyes got as big as saucers. He was like, that's exactly what keeps me awake at night. And she said, and also
Mm-hmm.
that they worry about, will the kids be able to handle the inheritance that you've worked so hard to build? He was like, that's exactly right. And so she said, the reason the firm pursued me so hard is because I'm so young, I'm 24, and the reason they want me to work here is I connect with the kids of founders and business owners like you. They listen to me so I can give them the financial literacy they need and help prepare them to do what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
I became a client the next week. And what we
Wow.
discovered was the CEO of this firm thought that her role was to directly prospect founders and business owners based on what he thought their concerns were. But the real
Mm-hmm.
worry is their kids. And so what happened was this 24-year-old, she then took what she thought was a liability, her age, and flipped it to be the greatest asset that she could have. And I said, listen, your age is a superpower. Use it well, and you're going to help grow this business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love that. And, it really comes from the perspective of focusing on where you actually are helping and serving them the best, right? Like
Right.
it's such a win-win. So that's a wonderful technique. And I guess, another maybe to kind of shift topics a little bit, when you think about advisors trying to grow their practices, like that particular example is very poignant, right? Like the first generation firm owner probably was thinking, oh, we're gonna do this strategy with,
Right.
this junior, and this is how it's gonna work. And then you actually go through the process of getting to know the client pain point more and realize, oh, actually, we got to go this completely other direction with it, and it's going to work way better. What are some things like that you've seen kind of at that global practice level that are slowing them down from hitting their growth goals, or, beyond just getting the right introductions and the right relationships? When it comes to kind of that strategy level, are there things that you see that are kind of akin to this issue, but at a macro level?
Yeah, so let me pivot a bit from owning a problem. I believe when you own a problem, you own your success. But what we
Mm-hmm.
know is that people are attracted to people who have a specialization. Okay, so a quick example. I was on stage at an event recently, and as part of my talk, I held up a Hershey's and Godiva chocolate. And I asked
Mm-hmm.
the crowd, I said, if you were to give a gift to the chocolate lover in your family, which chocolate would say that you love them more and spend more time? The Hershey bar or the Godiva? And people's hands are like Godiva, Godiva all the way. The Hershey
Mm-hmm.
bar was actually $5. The Godiva is like $15. And I asked them, well, why do you think Godiva is so much more? Oh, the price, the packaging, the perception, the taste. And I asked the advisors in the room, and I said, let me ask you a straight up question. In your local community, do your clients and your prospective clients see you as the Hershey bar advisor or the Godiva advisor? Are you
Mm-hmm.
pricing yourself like a Costco membership and you look like everybody else? Or are you like the Godiva chocolate? You stand out because you have a specialty and they're willing to pay you more for that specialty. And then I
Mm-hmm.
asked him, let's say you needed to have a delicate medical procedure done. Let's say it was your heart. Would you be more inclined to go to the general practitioner who knows a little bit about a lot, or the heart specialist who all she worked on was hearts 24/7? Most people say the heart specialist. And there are
Mm-hmm.
three things we know before you go see a specialist. Let's say it's Thursday at 4 o'clock. If you called the specialist, would you expect to get in first thing tomorrow morning? Yes or no?
No. No.
No. And based on your insurance, this can vary, but would you expect to pay more or less to see the specialist?
It would be more.
More. And then third, would you go in with the mentality of, I'm probably going to do the surgery myself. I don't really care what she says. Or would you walk in, you might even take a friend because you wanted to capture every word she said, and you'd be expecting to take her exact advice.
Oh my goodness. You're giving me flashbacks of conversations that I've had in the past with people with tax work. But yeah, you're going in there and doing the I'm in my hospital gown, like just tell me what to do. Tell me when to
Yeah,
show up.
yeah. And what we know is that when people are the specialist, they automatically have more prestige and respect even before the person gets to them. They come in with
Hmm.
a whole different mentality. There's less selling, there's more consulting. And
Yeah.
actually, we know the prospect is hoping, does this professional have space for me to become their client or their patient. And so
Mm-hmm.
on the big macro level, I would encourage every RIA, every broker dealer, every financial advisor, every firm owner to determine we specialize in, and then have that be a very short, easy, understandable specialty. Because what happens
Mm-hmm.
is, even for people who don't have that same pain point, the fact that you have a specialty, it draws them in. There's like, well, I don't have that problem, but could you work with me? Or I've got a
Yep.
friend who has that. And so when you
Mm-hmm.
have the mentality of the specialist, it is vital. And what I would add to that would be, and this was a problem that I had, just in a moment of vulnerability, Catherine, I had to look at myself in the mirror. There was a moment as I grew my practice over 25 years, before I sold it just a couple years ago to coach and consult and speak. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was the only person that could do things well in my business. It all had to be Derrick. I had to meet with
Mm-hmm.
everybody. I had to approve everything. Every system, every process went through me. And so what I
Mm-hmm.
realized was that that was the me show. And the me show can run pretty well for quite a while, but eventually you get burned out. But
Yeah.
the we show goes for a long, long time. And there was a moment in a team meeting where I was feeling frustrated, and I was asking the team, how do we go when we grow? And they just felt stuck. And so
Mm-hmm.
I stood up, walked to the middle of the room, and I laid down completely on my back. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, I've just had a medical emergency. I'm going to be in the hospital for the next 3 months. I can't see clients. What are we going to do? And
Mm-hmm.
a hush fell over the room. Someone finally said, should we try to resuscitate him? But then I heard a voice that said, okay, well, listen, if Derrick can't see clients, we've got to figure out who can. Let's figure out this problem. And then
Mm-hmm.
I stood up, quietly walked back and sat down. And that was the moment that my team took ownership of every process. But they
Mm-hmm.
came back to me a week later and they said, Derrick, we need to tell you something very urgent. And I said, yeah, go ahead. They said, well, hopefully you have thick skin. You are the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick, you're the one holding us back because everything has to go through you.
Yeah.
And it was a dose of humble pie that they just basically put in my face. But what happened was, when we made every system, and this would be probably the biggest takeaway for all of our listeners today, when you can make every system in your practice and your business you optional, when every
Yeah.
system is you optional, well, now you can scale and grow and you can really go. And within about 18 months, we expanded to 2 other cities in Texas. We bought another practice because I was the add on package, not the
Mm-hmm.
requirement to all the growth. And we took a firm mentality. It's no longer just Derrick's business, it's the firm. And it brought
Yeah.
safety, security, and comfort to clients and the team, because it was not just me, it was bigger than me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that because, I think for a lot of advisors that I talk to, they want to do that. They're afraid of letting go. And they feel like, oh, well, is this just me trying to get my day at the beach kind of thing? I'm a hard worker, but it really is like, if you genuinely care about the clients, you need to build the system that way. Because what if, you get the medical emergency? What if you get the spouse with the cancer diagnosis and you need to take time out? Are you going to let everything, grind to a halt just because of you? Like, that's not fair to the clients. Something that I think a lot about, and this is true, for my firm, and part of the reason why I love working with advisor practices, very similar thing is, as a firm owner, thinking of yourself as, I'm actually building a platform for other people to be successful in this, that this isn't about me. Like, this is about the clients to be successful, and this is about my team to be successful.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help coordinate that and steward that. But ultimately, it's not about me, because, you never know when something's going to happen to you, or you have to take a break out of the business, and you need it to be robust enough that it can handle that, and it's going to continue to grow, with or without you. But I think taking that mindset shift of, oh, I'm an advisor, I'm in the client relationships, I'm holding everything in my hand, versus, oh no, I'm here to build a platform, and this really should be an engine that I'm building, and that the engine sustains itself, that it doesn't need me to be constantly running it or putting the inputs in. to make it work. It's that it should have a life of its own. And that way, it'll be independent of me and I get the benefit of that, but also it gets the benefit of that, right?
Right.
It's not just about, you as, I think a lot of owners will feel guilty about that because they'll feel like, oh, well, I love my clients. I don't want to, I don't want to let that go. And it's not that you do, it's just you have to design it so that it can be, if you need to step away or something happens or just whatever it is, right? Treating yourself like a part of, I always say for firm owners, it's kind of weird because you're in the seat of an investor, but you're also in the seat of an employee at the same time.
Right.
And you need to be critiquing yourself kind of on wearing both of those hats. And a lot of people just, they don't like to be the investor who's saying, there's a lot of key man risk on this one guy, in this business. Versus if it were somebody else's business, like the advisor would probably point that out pretty quickly, right? Like, ooh, you got a lot of key man risk here. Like you want to get this sorted out. So when it comes to advisors wanting to do that, maybe what are a couple of little practical, steps that you took in that process or things that you've seen firm owners, be successful once they've kind of made that first leap of, okay, like I'm going to try to let go of some things or, how do I delegate and not feel like mistakes are going to happen, which it's never perfect.
Right, right.
I can speak from experience on that. I've had stuff I delegated to very experienced people that went sideways, even with the most robust quality control. So what are some of the, maybe some tips that you have around actually navigating that process?
Well, funny story. So some of my education on this came from a movie I saw called The Founder. Okay. So
Okay.
Michael Keaton is the actor, and it's basically the story of how McDonald's was founded. And there's a scene in the movie,
yes, yeah, I've seen
you might
that.
remember this, where
Yeah.
they actually take their whole team to a tennis court and they chalk off on the tennis court the kitchen.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is, you remember, is that they actually map out every movement from what it takes to cook the hamburgers, to the fries, to the drinks, to deliver the food, take the money. All these steps are mapped out so that no wasted steps occur. And when I saw that movie, it occurred to me, that's what financial firms need to do as well, is we can learn a lesson from the franchise model, okay? And so when you can look at all of your systems, now keep in mind, there's literally hundreds of systems that you do so automatically, you don't even think of them as a system. And so I would encourage you and your team to do is just identify 10 processes that you do every week. And ideally, just as they're doing them, just write down the key steps. Then you can begin to evaluate, is that the highest and best use of that person? Or is the founder to do that? Or should it be moved down to somebody else? And the goal is to basically memorialize all of these systems and processes. And then the goal now is you have an operating handbook that you can then do one of two things. Number one, it adds tremendous value to a possible sale of your business because you're systematized and structured. When I sold my own business, and I only talk about things that I've done personally or I've helped other top 1% advisors do. And when I sold my business, what made it attractive and sold for such a high multiple was all the systems were Derrick optional. I could step out, the new owner stepped in, my team stayed in place, and they continued to grow, and they've done great heights since then. But it's all systems. You're buying the systems and the structures. But here's the secret. Most advisors don't want to sell. So instead, now that you have this handbook, this franchise model of your business, now you can easily scale to other cities. You simply now need to put the right people in place because you already have the processes in place. And so when you do that, again, you go from the me show to the we show, but you add tremendous value. And what I would say to advisors, because I went through the same process, and that is sometimes you begin to feel guilty. Like we complain about how many hours we work, but we sort of wear it as a badge of courage. Like, I'm working 80 hours a week and I carry the weight of all my clients in my head all weekend. You can't help it because you care. I get it. But instead what you want to do is think about, I'm not abandoning my clients. I'm better serving my clients and the next generation by moving out of my role as an advisor and then moving up my role as the CEO of this firm to map out and navigate the growth of where we're going. And so you want to go from advisor time to CEO strategist time. Because if you want to grow and you don't do that, you're going to hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. The advisors who successfully, it's not always pretty, it's you got to live in the messy on this one. But when you
Mm-hmm.
elevate yourself into that CEO type of role, that's when you really begin to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a business coach many years ago who was he was an ex-military guy, ex-Navy guy, and he would talk about, when you're on an aircraft carrier and the captain's up in the cockpit, he's like, when there's a problem in the engine room, does the captain go down to the engine room and sort it out for them? No.
No.
When there's a problem on the flight deck, does he go down and sort it out for them? No. You know why? Because he's got to be looking where you're going.
Right.
And if he's not in that cockpit making sure that, hey, we're all the systems are on track, we're on the maps are all right, you're going to crash. Like, you can't have him doing that. And I think for a lot of advisors that can be the case. It's a real hurdle going from, being a solo advisor. Maybe you've got like a junior advisor underneath you to, okay, now if you've got multiple people on the team, how do you make those systems fly and make that transition work? So that's always stuck with me.
That's a
Yeah.
great analogy. I love that.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's a huge mindset shift, but then once you're in that zone of, okay, this isn't about me. This is about everybody else, and it is going to benefit me, but it's really going to benefit everybody else. Like, to have these systems for my team,
Right.
to have these systems for the client, to have these systems where if one team member leaves, we can easily transition them to another team member, and things are done under the way that we want them done. Once you've committed to that kind of a process, like the resale value on a practice like that, because I'm involved in succession planning,
Yeah.
it's significant. When you do these valuations and you look at the quality of a book and you look at how the operations run, and if it's a tight ship, it makes a really big difference versus if the advisor is, everything,
Yeah.
is the whole practice. It's a lot harder. So I guess for advisors that are interested in like working with you, Derrick, or learning more about you, can you speak a little bit more about kind of where they can find you, how they can interact with you, maybe, what kind of consulting and coaching work that you're up to these days?
Sure. Yeah, a couple easy access points to what I'm talking about today. There's a free download. It's called 10 Conversation Mistakes Advisors Make and How You Can Avoid It. It costs you clients. You can go to our website at successforadvisors.com and download that. Also, following me on LinkedIn. What we have found, which is crazy, advisors report that they have picked up $5 to $7 million clients just by following what I write about in my posts on LinkedIn. So it's proven to work. It's my commitment, no theory, only proven to work. And then privately, based on time available between speaking and consulting, I do take on some private one-on-one clients. And typically these are advisors and sometimes just entrepreneurs, but they know they're better than what their current revenue numbers say. They're doing all the right stuff, but they're not getting the results they know they're capable of. And so I've got a 5-step framework. It's typically a 12-month coaching program that we begin to see lift very, very quickly. It's not for everybody. There's intense accountability, there's intense focus, intense one-on-one, but a lot of access to me personally. And my goal is to help them achieve success and avoid the mistakes I made so they can hit their goals a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So we'll post a link to the 10 conversation mistakes. And then also you've got a book out, right?
Yeah. So Good Money Revolution it actually came out just a couple years ago. But the whole concept is that, especially financial advisors and entrepreneurs, they make good money. But oftentimes, if they make money the sole goal, it leads to burnout. And I discovered something because that was my problem as an advisor. But I realized that when you can connect a cause to your cash and purpose to your profits and meaning to your money, you pick something that you care about. I call it your generosity purpose. It invites you and basically incentivizes you to say, you know what, go make money, go make a lot of it by helping your clients make a lot of money so then you can give a lot of money to the causes you care about. And what we find is it allows people to lay their head on the pillow at night and feel like they lived a day of purpose and meaning every single day.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So for people wanting to check that out, we'll post the link to that as well. But any final thoughts, Derrick, before we sign off? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. And just the questions you asked were so good. I always tell people, don't die before you're dead. Just because what you've done so far hasn't worked, you might be 65, 55, 45, and you feel frustrated. Please remember that all of us were built with a reset button. I know I press mine every single day. Press it because I believe that you are here to serve the clients you're meant to serve. But when you can identify the problem, I like to say, if you want to make it rain, connect with pain. If you want to make it rain, connect with pain. When you do that, you're going to attract the clients you want, and you're going to make the money you want, so then you can give the money you want as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. And, it's entrepreneurship is such a challenge, and, winning just means not quitting, right?
That's right.
Just continuing is winning. If you live to fight another day, you're going to, success is built on a foundation of mistakes. I can speak to that from personal experience, but, no, that's wonderful advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Derrick. I really appreciate it. And for those of you listening, we'll post those links below for you to get connected with him and his LinkedIn as well. I highly recommend it. Excellent posting. So looking forward to getting those posted. And then if you have any feedback for us on the show, I'm always interested in getting a DM myself. So thanks again. Thanks for listening to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast, again, sponsored by Dominion Enterprise Services. If you found this episode valuable, I would love to personally hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message. I'm always interested in your feedback, future episode ideas, or questions you'd like to see covered in a future episode of the show. And be sure to subscribe to our monthly tax update newsletter, where we share timely tax insights and planning considerations specifically crafted for advisory firm owners and what we share to our own clients. We'll see you next time.